Hello and welcome back to the Odds Now YouTube channel for the latest episode of our World Cup Daily Betting Show series, where each day we team up and look ahead to the upcoming fixtures from the 2026 FIFA World Cup. My name is Matt Hill and I'm joined by one of my regular co-hosts. Today it's Adam Drury, and we're here to take a look ahead to the 6 final group stage games across groups D, E and F that are taking place on Thursday, the 25th of June, 2026. As always, and as we had in the last show as well, some of these groups, some things are decided, some things aren't. But I think one thing we can conclude is that the element of third place teams still being able to get through means pretty much every group still has something riding on it going into the last day of fixtures, which can only be a good thing, I suppose, for whatever other issues third place teams qualifying does create. We won't go off on that tangent because I've already done so with Felix on yesterday's show. And Adam, I'm sure your views are pretty similar. There's pros and cons to third place sides going through, but some entertaining games ahead here on this day. We'll go straight into the action because, as if you watched yesterday's show, you'll know we've got 6 games to cover in these now rather than 4, with the old split screening going on. These games kicking off at the same time. We start with Curaçao against the Ivory Coast, fresh off the back of securing a remarkable point against Ecuador, where I think the goalkeeper Room actually broke the record for saves in 90 minutes. I don't think he quite got to Tim Howard's total, which involved extra time. But yeah, I think 15 saves, I think it was, in 90 minutes during the 0-0 draw with Ecuador, which has given them a chance of getting through on the last day. But they're going to have to beat an Ivory Coast side who I would say have been pretty impressive up to this point. Got a good late win in a tight game with Ecuador on match day 1. And then were leading Germany for a long period before ultimately losing 2-1 to a 94th minute Dennis Undav winner. Undav getting both goals in that game. So it means that Ivory Coast still have a little bit of work to do with 3 points on the board. That may be enough, but they'll want to make sure, and they should make sure here really by all accounts, because they're 1.19 for the victory here. The draw is 8.8 and Curaçao out at 20 on the exchange for a remarkable victory. Adam, I'll bring you in for the first time today. Good to have you back on. Ivory Coast, very, very strong favourites for this one. Have you been really impressed with the way they've gone about their 2 games thus far? And are you expecting them to take care of business here?
Yeah, absolutely expecting them to. I think the Ecuador game was very, very tight and looked set to finish 0-0 until the latter stages. But that was the crucial game of this group, really. So to have picked up the 3 points there, not undeserved, but probably fair to say to have pinched the points when a draw might have been a fair result, was massive for them. Gave them a little bit of freedom in that Germany game, although again they probably impressed even more there than against Ecuador. Led for a fair amount of the game and very close to obviously coming away with a point. So yeah, expecting them to do the business here. Curaçao hammered by Germany in that first game, and then bar a miracle goalkeeper performance that you've already alluded to, could easily have been well beaten by Ecuador as well. We'll come on to Ecuador next because they're probably the unlucky team in this group so far based on performance level. But yeah, can't see, unless Curaçao can come up with another miracle, can't see them keeping Ivory Coast out here. And yeah, expecting them to finish this group on 1 point. So I'm kind of trying to find a way into the Ivory Coast, what could be a bit of a goal fest for them, expecting them to win quite comfortably. And my eye was drawn to Jan Diomande, the young winger from RB Leipzig. Obviously, lots of speculation about his future this summer, potential move to Liverpool on the cards, it seems. And I'm going to put him up to register an assist at 3-1 with William Hill. 7 chances created in this tournament so far. Only 6 players have more in the entire tournament. Hasn't actually registered an assist yet, but with those types of numbers, you would imagine they will come. 8 assists in the Bundesliga as well last season. So that's a potent Ivory Coast front line. You've got Amad Diallo and others up there as well. But I'm hoping if Ivory Coast can run in 3 or 4 goals here, which I would probably expect them to, yeah, Jan Diomande obviously just needs to keep up that chance creation record, and assists should come along. So I like that at 3-1.
Yeah, Jan Diomande is a player I've put up on a couple of occasions already this tournament, and he's not quite delivered the goods, but he does deliver exciting performances. You're always in the game with Diomande on side in the prop market, I think, because he's a bit of a throwback winger, isn't he? You can imagine if your club signed him, he'd be quite frustrating at times because he does sometimes overcomplicate matters, I suppose. But I think that's the key to like elite game-changing wingers, really. He's not afraid to try things. And if they don't work, he will try them again. And he will inevitably have days where things don't go his way. But he can unlock a door. And I think if Ivory Coast make the knockouts as we're expecting them to, he's going to take a lot of watching from whoever they play in the last 32, because he does have the ability to, even when they're under the cosh, just produce a moment that gets the game, and obviously had a big role to play in that opening goal, even though he didn't, against Germany, even though he didn't get the direct assist. So I like that. And I think that line is quite generous when you're considering that they're expected to, as you say, rack up a few goals here. Well, I wanted to get with Ivory Coast as well in this game, but I was a little bit tentative in backing them on like massive handicaps, because they don't really need to score 4, 5, 6. Like 2 or 3 is enough. And then, they might take, if they're 2 or 3-0 up at half time, they might start taking the opportunity to bring off the likes of Diomande, the likes of some of their key players in forward areas. Frank Kessié in midfield, obviously getting on now, but a key player for them. And I don't think they'd want to risk him longer than they needed to. So I also think that Curaçao, look, they're very fortunate to have a point on the board. Really, that Ecuador game was a frustrating one for anyone that backs Ecuador in outright markets. But like, fair play to them, obviously, a defensive performance of a lifetime for them. They got the goal against Germany as well, so they do, as we saw in qualifying, they do have a bit of a threat on the break, but I can only see them being sort of well beaten by Ivory Coast here. And I think scores like 2-0, 3-0, 3-1 are all legitimate, so I didn't want to get involved in a big handicap. The handicap that I have ended up taking was Ivory Coast on the corner line. And both of their games, Curaçao, obviously one of them was a 7-1 defeat and one of them was a 0-0. But in both of those games, they lost the corner count by 9. So it's pretty clear that they back themselves to defend set pieces. And they did so very well against Ecuador, because that Ecuador team's got a lot of height in it and good defensive threats. But they dealt with them very, very well. Obviously, the keeper had a great game as well. So I don't think they mind sort of giving up corners. They seem to back themselves to handle them. And they don't have a lot of threat going the other way. It was 10-1 against Germany and 9-0 against Ecuador on the corner counts. So I was a little bit surprised to see the Ivory Coast line at only -4.5. I feel like that's very coverable. And I feel like if you like laddering these kind of lines, you could back Ivory Coast -4, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, and feel like you've got a chance of that really sort of notching up, because I do think Ivory Coast will have a lot of the ball, but they're probably a better team in transition when the team comes out to them. So there is a world where this becomes a slightly frustrating day for the Ivory Coast, where they have a lot of the ball but don't actually sort of find a way through. But they will keep going out to the wings. They will keep trying to get those wide players in the game, keep taking on the Curaçao fullbacks, and I think that could easily result in corners. So quite bullish on this Ivory Coast corner line. -4.5 at the time of recording is 1.96 with Boyle Sports, and kind of 4 to 5 upwards everywhere else. My other bet, I'm just going to have a half point on this becoming a goal fest, as you kind of mentioned. I thought that over 5.5 goals at 7 to 1 with Sky Bet, just a little bit big, because you consider all the possible correct scores in this. I say that there's a definite world where it's a 2-0, 3-0, 3-1. On the other flip side, we saw what Germany did to them. Ivory Coast have got a lot of good attacking players. If they're 2 or 3-0 up within half an hour, this could get ugly. So I just wanted to have a half point on that, just in case that game state kind of heads in that direction. But my main play would be the corners. And as I say, if you like laddering, then I think that is a good game where you could look to ladder that particular market. But yeah, both quite pro Ivory Coast in that opener. Well, the other game in this group is a much more important one, and has the potential to be a great game. I think if you're not split screening, this is probably the one to watch. Ecuador versus Germany. It's been an interesting market to watch this as well. Initially, before they played Curaçao, Ecuador was 6.2 to win this game. Then they went into sort of 3.7 when it was clear that they would need a victory here. Now they're on the drift again, maybe just a bit of market correction, perhaps. Ecuador 4.0 at the time of recording. The draw is 4.3 and Germany 1.9. It's an interesting one in terms of game state, this game, because Germany are already through, already secured top spot, and do not need to worry about that, because even if Ivory Coast beat Curaçao, they've got the head-to-head advantage over Ivory Coast. Not a massive fan of head-to-head coming in as the decisive factor, but we won't go off on a tangent there. But anyway, so Germany, no real need to win this game at all. Can definitely rest as many players as they see fit. Wouldn't be all that surprised to see 9 or 10 changes from Julian Nagelsmann as he looks to protect key players for the latter stages and give some minutes to his fringe players, I suppose. Whereas Ecuador, it's do or die. Literally heartbroken in both of these games. First game, I think, I totally agree with you, Adam. Not necessarily saying they did enough to win the game, but they did hit the woodwork twice. It looked like both teams would play all day and not score until Ivory Coast scored in the 94th minute. So that was a heartbreaking defeat for them. And then there was an expectation they would just bounce back and do a job on Curaçao, and 35 shots and drew 0-0. It's like one of those games where you're playing a Football Manager where you throw your laptop out the window. You get so frustrated with it. But they do happen every now and then. Unfortunately for Ecuador, it's happened at the worst possible time. But they have to now go and beat Germany to have any chance of going through. And I think they can do it. I really do. I'm willing to die on this Ecuador hill. I've been pro Ecuador before the tournament. I've stuck with them through the tournament, frustratingly. And this might be just the day where Ecuador backers get some reward. I think if you looked at these two teams in terms of their starting 11, I actually think you could make a case that Ecuador aren't too far off Germany in a lot of areas. Defensively, I think they're every bit as much. And I guess the worry would be that Germany rotating the forwards, they've still got good forwards to come in, and they will be playing with a level of freedom where they can unpick defences. If Germany score early, Ecuador have got to go for it, and they're not a goal-heavy side. We all know this. That was the main top topic of debate coming into this tournament, was Ecuador very good defensively but don't score many goals. So if Germany do score, it's a problem for Ecuador. I think the way Ecuador have to do this, they have to summon a classic Ecuador performance. It has to be a really solid defensive effort, maybe nick a 1-0 win. And I'm going to back them to do it. I think the price is still tempting enough. I'm going to have 2 points on Ecuador to win at 3-1. I totally get why they're drifting out again. Obviously, there is a little bit of a pedigree gap, certainly, between these two nations. But I think a Germany side with nothing to play for versus an Ecuador side with everything to play for, I think it's quite a close game anyway. I'm going to just take a chance at the price for them to get it done. And I'm going to have a further point. Why not die on the hill on Ecuador to win 2-0 at 7.5. I think this could be the 1-0 backs to the wall performance that keeps Ecuador's World Cup going. I hope maybe I'm going with my heart over my head there. But Adam, I see you've gone down a similar line as well. I mean, Ecuador definitely unlucky to only be on 1 point. And the fact Germany have already done the job, surely that has something to play in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've covered all the reasoning really well. Germany have got the group wrapped up. This is the perfect chance to rotate. England, we're recording just after England have missed the opportunity to do that in the third game. And I think that's one of the real benefits of winning both of your first two matches, is that in a long tournament, you give yourself the chance almost to take your foot off the pedal for 2 or 3 days. And that could well be the mindset that Germany come into this game with. And they weren't hugely impressive against Ivory Coast. They hobbled over the line, having struggled for long periods. I think the Curaçao game, we could probably draw a line through really in terms of real big takeaways about their level. And this is kind of the perfect storm for Ecuador, because you've got a Germany team that maybe haven't been quite as good as 2 wins from 2 might suggest, making changes, and you've got an Ecuador team who have probably been better than the 1 point they've got on the board so far. They're up in 9th for XG going forward in the competition, which for a team famed more for its defensive capabilities is pretty impressive. As you said, they could well have beaten Ivory Coast. They could well have hammered Curaçao, let alone beat them. So we're kind of looking for a little bit of almost reversion to the mean for Ecuador and Germany here, even if this was 2 teams going at full throttle, which it's not. It's Ecuador going at full throttle and Germany potentially taking their foot off the gas. So I completely agree with you. And it feels like one of those, it almost feels like a trap, because it's so set up. All the reasoning seems to add up, and yet clearly the market still has Ecuador as fairly heavy outsiders. So Germany's reserve players will be decent enough, and they're never not going to be competitive in the game. So I have played it a little bit safer with the draw no bet. But I have to say, as you were talking, the game state here as well could kind of take the draw out of the equation if it's 0-0 heading into the latter stages, and Ecuador have to throw everything at it. So I've gone with the safety net of money back with a draw, but all the logic and all the reasoning adds up to Ecuador giving this a really good go.
Yeah, and again, there'll be people. A lot of people are just reactive to actually what happens rather than than sort of looking deeper. And I do get that, there seems to be two types of punter to my eye. There's people who understand and are very much wedded to like backing value, winning in the long run, backing things at the right price rather than necessarily what you think is most likely to happen. And then there's people who just want to back winners and just want to know what happened. I think there'll be some people after the game that say, "Oh, it was crazy that so many people were backing Ecuador if Germany were to win." But the logic is pretty clear that there's one team that needs to win. There's one team that doesn't. I don't think there's a lot between these two teams. I think one side has been flattered by their points total and one has been underappreciated. All that adds together to make Ecuador a strong bet. If you think that if you're strong on an angle, I'm always been a firm believer you've got to go hard on it. You don't always get great opportunities. Don't be afraid to lose on them because they don't come across that often. And I think regardless of how this game goes, I won't regret having a go on Ecuador here because I think all the workings out are sound and I'm happy in my mind that this is a good bet regardless of how it kind of goes. So pro Ecuador for me, and hopefully they can get the job done for both of us there. Well, we move on to a new group now, and this is the Japan and Netherlands group with those two already taking care of business, and they're through with their 4-point totals. Sweden, we've seen two sides to them, haven't we, with a 5-1 win and a 5-1 loss. I can't imagine there's many teams that have done such extreme parallels in their two opening games of a group stage. And then Tunisia have been the disaster team of this tournament, haven't they? Two heavy defeats, sacked the manager after match day one, and they're going home early. But this group, obviously, we've still got two things to decide: who's going to get top spot out of Japan and the Netherlands, and with Sweden as well, can they make sure that they get through, because they've got 3 points, but they've got a 0 goal difference, so they might very much find themselves on the precipice of elimination and progression, depending on how other groups pan out, of course. We start with Japan versus Sweden. Japan 1.92 for this game. The draw is 3.75 and Sweden 4.6 at the time of recording. I've been very impressed with Japan, Adam. I've got to say, I thought like the game against the Netherlands, they probably were second best in terms of general play, but what they did was waited for their opportunities and took them with a real clinical edge. Two beautiful goals in that game. They're very well organised. We've already seen them impress against England. Fans got to see them close up when they played them in a friendly not so long ago, and they were really good there. So I don't think this is surprising anyone to see Japan like this, but I was almost more impressed with the way they took apart Tunisia. Like, Tunisia are obviously a team in a bit of crisis, but they brought in a manager, tried and tested in like Hervé Renard, who's coached at loads of World Cups with different African teams, and he tried to go back to sort of defensive structure and basics. And obviously, you've got to say this is a Tunisia team in an absolute mess, and there is chaos going on. But Japan took care of them. They won 4-0. It could have been 6 or 7. And a variety of players scoring. I'm really pleased to see Ueda get off the mark as well, because he's had a great season in the Eredivisie with 25 goals for Feyenoord. And I think he could be Japan's goal man in the latter stages, because I just think he's got such a good eye for goal and really nice technique. He got himself a couple of goals. Kamada's got a couple of goals already as well. And then there's some players that play in the English and Scottish leagues in forward areas that we're very familiar with as well. So they've got good attacking options there. Sweden, we've seen both sides of Sweden, haven't we? And you wonder, were they overly flattered by the Tunisia win, or were they overly disgraced by the Netherlands defeat? I think maybe a little bit of both. To be fair, I thought they were good in that first game, clinical, some nice finishes, but Tunisia handed them a couple as well. Netherlands, that was not a 5-1 game really, but like, it is what it is, isn't it? Ultimately, it resulted in 0 points, and it comes down to match day 3 for them. So it's all about how they respond to that and how Graham Potter manages to kind of regather the troops and not let them get too downbeat about a 5-1 defeat, I suppose. This is effectively feels like knockout football for them now. They've got to go and get a result here, and they might might be attractive to a few people at the price. But I am quite pro Japan. So when I looked at this game, I leaned away from the 1x2 market, and I just find myself thinking this is going to be an entertaining game. So I ended up with a main bet on both teams to score and over 2.5 goals here at 2.1. Like I said, Japan, they just seem to be a team that can find a way to cut through teams. They've got so much good build-up play. They create chances, and they've been tucking them away. I think they're very confident. They're obviously still gunning for top spot here, so they've got something to play for, albeit they'd have to make up some goal difference on the Netherlands. So I expect a good showing from them. And you look at the attacking options that Sweden have got, even the front two alone, Isak and Gyökeres, it's really hard to see how they won't be scoring in this game. So I thought that was a really solid way into this. And as my second bet, I've got two actually. I've split a 1.5 across Yassin Ayari's shot lines 2.5 and 3.5 at 3.6 and 8.0 respectively. Ayiri, people will be aware of him. He plays for Brighton in the Premier League. Obviously, he's not an absolute nailed-on starter, but he's got a good amount of minutes, roughly 2,000 minutes in the Premier League last season. So he's a semi-regular in that Brighton midfield. And he averages 2 shots a game in the Premier League, which is not a bad total for somebody who's primarily a sort of more defensive-minded midfielder. And actually, I was looking earlier, and out of defensive midfielders, or what are listed as defensive midfielders in the Premier League, he ranked in the top 10% for shots per 90 minutes last season. So even despite his deep playing status, he does like to get a shot away. He appears to be playing a lot more further forward for Sweden on the whole in this tournament, and he certainly hasn't been shot shy. 2 goals in that opening game against Tunisia, 5 shots against the Netherlands without success. So I see no reason why he's going to stop taking on shots here. And I do think this will be a bit of a pinball game, as suggested by my main bet of BTTS and over 2.5 goals. So I'm going to just chance Ayari to keep trying his arm, really. I think the 2 goals in the first game have given him a lot of confidence. To then have 5 shots against a team of the Netherlands' calibre is very encouraging. So over 2.5 shots, he's just over 5-2 for fractions heads like myself, and 7-1 on over 3.5 shots, which again he covered both of these lines in his last game. So that's the way I'm going to play this game. Adam, I've obviously rambled on quite a lot about those two sides. Anything to add there on Japan and Sweden? Have you been impressed with Japan as well?
Yeah, absolutely. They were the team I kind of had as my dark horse coming into it, as I know lots of others did, and I think they've lived up to that so far. The way they took Tunisia apart, Tunisia are a bit of a mess, but that's still impressive, and they're very surgical and exact in their play, which makes them really dangerous team. I've kind of approached this one with a slightly different way of thinking about it, I suppose, in terms of the actual state of the group and what both teams need to happen here. There is obviously, I think there is a danger of overthinking that at times, but kind of look at this and think a draw will do both teams very nicely. And so that's what I'm going to put up at 11-4, 3.75. I think Japan, a big part of this could be how it plays out in the other game. Because if Netherlands pull clear of Tunisia quite early and put them away as we expect, Japan, or unless they hammer Sweden, won't be able to win the group. In which case a draw would suit them very nicely to secure second spot ahead of Sweden. Sweden need that final point themselves to secure a place in the next round. And I think for Japan as well, even if the group is there to win, the winner and runner-up in this group plays the winner and runner-up of the Brazil-Morocco group next. And I think there's a chance that teams will look at those two as relatively even and probably not worth pushing the boat out to try and avoid Brazil and get Morocco, for example. I think Japan look good, but don't think this is one where they need to overexert themselves. And as you said, Sweden do have goals in their team with that front two, even if they don't play brilliantly. I thought they were 5-1 was clearly a harsh scoreline against the Netherlands. Like that's a bit of a noisy 5. That could have been 2 or 3-1 and may have been more representative of what the game was like. I think a point will do Sweden just to take them through. A point will do Japan to secure second spot, assuming that top spot isn't really up for grabs. And I think generally, backing the draw isn't a bad way to go in these relatively tight games. It tends to be the outsider of the 3. So not the biggest stake, but I'm gonna plumb for a draw at 11-4.
Yeah, sound logic there. I can definitely see how you've gone down that route. And there's a lot of games, isn't there, like this, where you're just looking at it thinking, well, it does feel likely. Some of these draw markets, as I'm sure we'll end up coming on to a few, some of them have been really, really well backed. It's a rare occasion in football where you see the draw as the favourite, but match day 3 of a tournament is one of those. Well, the other game in this group, we've already kind of covered both teams, so no need to go too in depth. Netherlands obviously flying really with 4 points, but scored 7 goals across their 2 games, and have caught a lot of people's eye, I think. And Tunisia, the disaster team of the World Cup, they will be going home with no points according to the market because they're 27 to win this game on Betfair Exchange. Draw is 10.5, Netherlands 1.15. I've got to say, I'm not going to down talk Netherlands too much, but I've seen better 1.15 shots than the Netherlands because I think there's a danger they're being overrated a tad at the minute. I totally got the pre-tournament stances on them because of their outright price comparative to some of the others. But on what I've actually seen with my own eyes, I do have a few concerns about the Netherlands. I've got to be honest. Yes, they look very potent going forward, but as you say, that Sweden game, I'm not sure they created 5 goals worth of chances. The XG certainly tells me they didn't, and my own eyes tell me they didn't as well. You know, they were clinical, to be fair to them. They also gave up 21 shots against Sweden. So to win 5-1, giving up 21 shots, I mean, just for like a bit of context, 21 shots is kind of what you would associate with a team that's just won 4-0. So, you know, to have 21 shots and lose 5-1, I think Sweden can count themselves a little bit hard done by, and Netherlands have probably been flattered by that result. The 2-2 with Japan, they were good in stages, but I thought Japan were good value for a point there, to be honest, and caused them some problems at the other end of the pitch, which I think could be exploited further down the line in this tournament. So if you back Netherlands pre-tournament, you're probably happy with your stance. I'm not sure I'd be rushing to back them now at the current price. I feel like the reaction has been fair, maybe over the top to a degree. We shall see. In this particular game, I wasn't mad on this game, to be honest. The market tells you what it should be. It should be a comfortable Netherlands victory, largely due to Tunisia's crisis more than anything else. So I've just had 2 small plays for me on this. I normally stick 3 points a match, just 1.5 here. I'm going to just chance a point on Bart Verbruggen 2.5 saves here. I just thought the price was big. You literally need 3 P rollers. I tried this with Uzbekistan against Portugal on what day was that? 2 days ago, so Tuesday, and that ended up being 5-0 to Portugal, and it's still very nearly copped. They had 2 quite tame shots on target in the first 50 minutes, and I spent the last 40 minutes of that game willing Uzbekistan to just roll one to Diogo Costa, and it didn't happen. The amount of play they had around the box, I tell you, you would only notice that if you were on this particular bet, but I was pulling my hair out saying, just shoot, somebody shoot, please. They also had a worldie disallowed in the first half as well, which would have cashed it. So it is worth looking at these minnows lines for shots and shots on target, because they're so low. They're so big, because the expectations are so low that you really don't need much to go right for you, or they don't need to be particularly impressive for this to land. I think partly because they didn't have a shot on target last time out, that this line is so big, but they didn't have a shot on target, and Hervé Renard is going to, whatever he tried in that second game, it didn't work, did it? So I think it might just be, let's just go out and have a little bit of fun and have a go and try and put a bit of respect back on the country's name. So happy to chance that at the price. And then in terms of the Netherlands, I just wanted to have a little interest on an anytime scorer, and I thought Denzel Dumfries is a player who every time I see him at a tournament, I think he's got a little bit better, and he's what he is, in a very, very dynamic attacking fullback / wingback, and how many times you see him driving into the box. He's scored ample tournament goals for somebody in his position, and I don't think he's going to change. The only worry would be, will he start or will he be rested? So I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't feature here, but in case he does, obviously it'd be void if he doesn't start. I thought 9-2 for him to get on the score sheet against a weak opponent is probably a fun way of playing this one. Adam, I could see you're similar to me in not having a strong opinion about the win lines in this game, because you've gone for a card. It's your pick here.
Yeah, again, partly the state of the group as well, like 2-0, 1-0, 2-0 might do the Netherlands and they take their foot off the gas. So I wasn't really too interested. I mean, that price of 27 for Tunisia to win, I don't think they're going to win, but it catches the eye, doesn't it?
It does.
Purely on the basis that, as we've seen in this tournament relatively often, it feels like we might get one big minnow victory at one stage. Ghana pushing England, Cape Verde pushing Spain, various others so far. Like, it wouldn't be that much of a shock if we see one in this round of games. But
I can't remember if I mentioned this on yesterday's show, but just in case I didn't, I was just doing a little bit of a look back on 4 years ago at match day 3, and in these games where the favourites already through, they're so vulnerable. I think South Korea beat Portugal, Cameroon beat Brazil, Japan beat Spain, Tunisia beat France at a similar price to this. It does happen. It does happen. Obviously, you're going out on a limb saying it, but if there's ever a time for these kind of results to happen, it is now.
And they've got a new manager in. I know it's in weird circumstances, but this is probably more of an opportunity for him to have maybe had an impact than in that first match. And they're not going to want to go out being remembered as probably at this stage one of the worst World Cup teams in several tournaments. Like they've just been hammered twice. So yeah, anyway, I'm not going to go with that, but certainly don't want to really be on side with the Netherlands either at the prices. So I've just picked out a Tunisia player to be carded, Ali Abdi. Very dynamic left wing back, plays for Nice. 6 tackles and 4 fouls across the 2 games so far. The foul numbers are fairly strong in Ligue 1 for Nice as well. Possibly going to come up against Crescencio Somerville on that flank, who's been one of the standout players of the tournament so far for the Netherlands. And yeah, kind of leaning in towards your view as well, that Tunisia might just go out swinging here. They're not going to want to go out too meekly, and yeah, hoping that they put themselves about a little bit. So Ali Abdi to be carded. He's 3-1 elsewhere as well, so quite like that we're getting 5-1 on a player who does commit fouls up against some tricky attackers out on that flank. He's who I've plumped for at small stakes, but found this one kind of a difficult match to find an angle on, really.
Yeah, I'm half regretting not having half a point on Tunisia at 27, to be honest. But it's not too late. I might change my mind. It's probably a terrible, terrible decision. Well, that was yeah. You mentioned about Tunisia going out swinging, and I think it's interesting at this stage to try and work out the mindset of the teams that are already eliminated, because you can go either way, can't you? You can kind of be, I just want to get out of here. This is terrible. Like, I don't want to play this third game. Or is it a case of restoring pride? And hopefully it's the latter for Tunisia, and they make it a bit more interesting than the market suggests. Well, we've got another game coming up, the last game of this show, where there's a team already out who may be looking to restore some pride. But before we get to that one, let's do this one where I talk about games where the draw is favourite. This is one of them, Paraguay versus Australia. Of course, it goes without saying, the draw will do both brilliantly. It will send both through to the latter stages by all means and purposes, because it will put them both onto 4 points. Australia won their first game with a fantastic counter-attacking backs to the wall performance against Turkey, and then were beaten by the USA, but not disgraced by any stretch. Paraguay, on the other hand, were whooped by the USA on match day 1, and then did a backs to the wall performance on poor old Turkey again. And yeah, now we have this situation where a nice 0-0 or 1-1 draw here. Shake hands, lads, and see you in the knockouts. There's a danger that we're oversimplifying it, Adam, but I think at the prices, we've both, I noticed this is with no consultation, we've both landed on the exact same best bet here. So I'll let you tee it up first.
Yeah, again, kind of worried it's a bit of a trap. Like, have we overthought how both teams are going to approach this? Is it really a thing that the two managers shake hands beforehand on what this game's going to look like? Probably not. Like, I would imagine that Paraguay may have a little dart at this game to try and get up into second spot. But the reality is that ultimately both teams are going to be happy with qualification from this group by any means possible. I think for both of these sides, topping the group wasn't necessarily a priority, and finding themselves in that last 32 is probably box ticked for the competition, particularly Australia, who were, I think, 4th favourites in this group. USA and Turkey obviously more fancied. And I think there is logic in the way that the two teams play as well. Australia are a team who like to get men behind the ball and try and break quickly, but aren't a front foot team. Paraguay as well, in qualifying, certainly their strength was keeping the likes of Brazil and Argentina and Uruguay quiet. So even if this was a game being played in normal circumstances, a 0-0 or 1-1 would kind of make sense. When you chuck in the game state, I'm not saying they're going to be wandering around passing the ball between themselves for 90 minutes, but it wouldn't shock me if they do for the last 20 or 30 if they find themselves at 0-0 or 1-1 at that stage. So this is the obvious bet, I think, at nearly 2-1, basically back in the draw, but taking out back in the draw in the context we expect it to happen, taking out kind of 2-2 or 3-3 humdinger. 0-0 or 1-1 at nearly 2-1. It feels like it's likelier than that. But yeah, I hope we haven't been duped into something here.
Well, we might well have been, but as I said with Ecuador earlier, sometimes you see a price and you're just going to say, look, that is the outcome I think is going to happen in this game. The price is good. Let's just go for it. I normally put 3 points split like 2-1 or 2 half or whatever. I've just had my 3 points on this in this game. I'm just going all in because I totally agree with you that is this definitely going to happen? No. Is it the likeliest occurrence? For me, yes. Like, I don't see goals in either of these teams. I mean, Australia, they've got a threat when the other team goes for it and they can get in behind on transition. Paraguay don't go for it. Like Paraguay do the same as Australia. They sit in and try and go on transition. So like you say, even in normal circumstances, this wouldn't be a game that would be screaming goals to me. But when it's a low scoring draw, you know, the likeliest outcome anyway suits both teams. The only worry I have, I guess, for this bet is, like you said, everyone, it seems so obvious, and everyone's kind of pre-discussing that it should and will go like this. Does that impact the two teams almost? And they almost hear it and think, well, no, we don't want to just go for a draw. We'll go for a win. I'm not going to be associated with this kind of disgrace. Does it almost put them off this kind of scenario? But you're totally right in what you say. This isn't going to be a 90 minutes passing it around the back job. What it is they're probably going to have a little go at each other for the first half, first hour, and then if it's 1-0, you're in the game because the other team needs to get it to 1-1, which isn't a disaster for the lead inside. If it's a draw, then why keep pushing? Why risk getting yourself knocked out of the World Cup when you can both just take no risks and get through? I don't think that's unfair. They're just victims of the sort of silly circumstances of group stage football. So I'm happy to chance this. I'm all in on drawing under 2.5, and let's hope that we're right and they both play to the script anyway. Might not be one for the neutral one in an exciting game, but it'll do us nicely. Okay, then on to the last game in today's show, and I touched on it earlier, a team that's already out, but it's all about how you think they're going to handle the circumstances. Turkey versus USA. When you looked at the fixtures before the tournament started, you'd have had this one down as a game that might be a humdinger, going for the group winner, both going hell for leather. As it is, you can't help but feel sorry for Turkey, can you really? I think they've had 61 shots across the two games. They're yet to score a goal, and they're going home regardless of what happens here. Now, I've seen a lot of people quick to jump on the sort of anti-Turkey bandwagon and say, oh, they're always put up as a dark horse and they always flop. I'm sorry, if they played those two games again, I don't think there's many simulations where they would get 0.0 goals. Like, there's some fantastic saves in there, some really bad misses as well, it's got to be said. And when they were done on the transition against Australia as well, that was, you know, one very early and one again when they were sort of, they'd been piling onto them for an hour and then just got done on the break. So I feel really sorry for Turkey, and I do still strongly believe that this is quite a good side with some really exciting young players. I feel sorry for the likes of Çalhanoğlu, who you don't know how many more World Cups, if any, he's got left, and that was a sad way to go. But I think there's a case that they want to go out with a spirited performance here and show what they can do against the host. It's a good way to leave a positive reminder of themselves on this tournament rather than, you know, going out early, which is what's going to happen. The USA, on the other hand, very, very impressive match day one. Probably less impressive match day two, but still got the job done. And I think Mauricio Pochettino, real pragmatist, surely he's going to take no chances in this game. Why would you risk players that have looked so essential to you, like Weston McKennie, like Flo Balogun, Pulisic already having injury issues? So I'm expecting some change in rotation in this American side here. And I think that might just lend itself to an upset. But before I do my picks, Adam, how are you seeing this game?
Yeah, I mean, I see it the same way in a sense when it comes to Turkey. They've had 62 shots in the tournament, which is the most in the entire World Cup, 13 more than second place, who was Spain with 49. So that's a fairly remarkable statistic, considering they've not scored a goal and lost both matches. It is true that lots of those shots have been from distance, and actually the Australia game particularly, they just seem to be firing off shots from here, there and everywhere. They're actually 11th for XG out of the 48 teams, despite sitting so far clear for shots at the top of that metric. So they're not creating fantastic chances to score, but it is still remarkable that they've not scored a single goal with that volume of shots. So yeah, absolutely backing them to end that here and score. They're obviously out of the competition, but I think with the exciting young players they've got in their team, they will. The performance level should still be there enough to find the net. USA, I agree with you that they may ease off a little bit here, but I also, there's so much momentum behind them at the moment. I mean, to me, they've been the revelation of the tournament stripping away host nations and all of that, purely who has outperformed what I thought they'd be, I think it's comfortably been USA. They look like a team which could really threaten the latter stages. And I don't think Pochettino will want them to lose that energy and momentum going into the last 32, even though they've wrapped up what they need to wrap up. So whether they make changes or not, I would imagine the performance will still be good and they'll still play on the front foot and play with that energy that we've seen. So these are two teams who want to score goals. There's nothing to protect. Turkey are out. USA have won the group. And I would imagine that we're going to see a very good game, should see a very good game as a result. So I've taken BTTS and over 2.5 goals. USA, obviously it landed in that first game and not in the second. Turkey haven't scored, but we've covered the fact that surely they're going to if they keep raining shots down on goal. Everything adds up to me that this is going to be an entertaining game where neither team is too worried about the consequences. So I like this angle of BTTS and over 2.5.
Nice. Well, I think we've both sort of made our feelings clear on the game, so I'll just go straight into my picks. And I've seen enough in these prices to chance the Turkey win. I think that the USA may rotate, and as much as they won't want to lose on home turf, it's certainly not the end of the world for them, because all eyes are going to be on their round of 32 game, aren't they, which is coming up imminently. I think it's really important that they get a rest into a few of those key players. And yes, the lads coming in are going to want to impress, but Turkey, for me, they've got a lot of pride to play for. They're a proud footballing nation, the Turks. They really will be dejected by the way this tournament's gone, but they'll expect their players to go out on their shield and put in a bit of a performance here. And I think on all the underlying numbers, on everything I've seen from Turkey in the first two games, there's no reason they can't win this game. I think they're a massive price to do so at 11-4. And then as well, just in case the goals start finally flowing for Turkey too late, I thought the 7-1 about them to score more than 2 in this game was maybe worth a point as well. It could just be, like London buses where you have 62 shots to no avail, and then suddenly you manage to get 2 or 3 in as well. And I think that, I just wanted to have that on side. I am expecting Turkey to go out with, a good show in here. And I really don't think it's a disaster if the USA don't win this one, as much as I'm sure there'll be a narrative that it'll stop the momentum or dampen the spirits. But I think Mauricio Pochettino's too experienced to worry about that. I think he just knows that this is a nothing game. The next one is an everything game. And he maybe just use that pragmatism to just protect them a little bit, maybe at the sacrifice of a result here. Okay, well, that rounds up today's betting show. Do let us know what you're backing in the comments for this one. And if you haven't already, please consider giving the video a thumbs up and hitting subscribe to keep helping the channel grow. It's great to have you on board. Well, we'll just whiz through these picks then. I've gone Ivory Coast -4.5 corners as my main bet in that game against Curaçao, and a 0.5 point on over 5.5 match goals. Adam is focusing on Diomande, the impressive winger, to get an assist at 3-1. Ecuador versus Germany. I'm all in on Ecuador for one last time, hopefully not in this tournament. Ecuador to win at 3.9 and Ecuador to win to 0 at 7.5. Germany don't need the result here. And Adam is also going Ecuador, albeit with a draw no bet at 3.0. Japan, Sweden, we're both expecting quite an entertaining affair here. Adam's going for the draw, which is kind of mutually beneficial at 3.75. I've gone BTTS and over 2.5 goals as my core bet. And then I'm going to chance Yasin Ayari on the shots lines over 2.5 and over 3.5 for a little bit of a fun play. Tunisia versus Netherlands. I wouldn't be backing Netherlands at 1.15, even though I do expect them to win. Ali Abdi to be carded is Adam's pick here at 5-1. I've gone for Bart Verbruggen over 2.5 saves at 4.2 and Denzel Dumfries 0.5 point on anytime goal scorer at 9-2. Paraguay versus Australia. We've both landed on this really, really obvious angle of drawing under 2.5 goals, which will see both sides through. Hopefully they play ball there. And then I'm going for Turkey to go out with a flourish. Turkey to win and Turkey over 2.5 goals. My players against the USA. Adam expects goals too. He's gone for BTTS and over 2.5 goals. Brilliant. Well, thanks very much for watching. We'll be back once again to dissect Friday's games as the group stage hurtles towards a conclusion. Hope you're enjoying the videos at odds now. We'll see you again very soon. Thanks for watching.